Hey, welcome to Salty Vibes with Heather. This is getting posted late because I had a whole recording done and for some reason my microphone died and I cannot get them to charge correctly. So the sound may be a little off because when I have to do it through my phone, it doesn't record as well. But I'm doing this scrappy, like I said, and this is where I'm at right now until this actually grows and whatever it's supposed to be growing to. So I got to remember a little bit what I had. I had like a whole thing going on. For Mother's Day weekend, my mom and I went to Vegas with my childhood best friend and her mom. And we had done a trip like over 10 years ago to Vegas for a rock and roll marathon with a mom-daughter trip. And we'd always been talking about redoing the trip again. And decided that we would do it Mother's Day weekend because No Doubt was at the Sphere and my friend really wanted to go to the Sphere, and it was an awesome experience. And we also went and saw Australian Bee Gees for our moms because that was their generation, so we got a mix of what we love and a mix of what our moms love, and then we just had a fun time. But on the trip my mom wasn't feeling 100%. And so when we got home back to my house, because my mom doesn't live in the same state as I live in, my friend's a doctor and she's like, you really should, take your mom to get checked. And my mom didn't want to do it while we're in Vegas because she didn't want to ruin the trip and she didn't want to be stuck, if something was serious, which she didn't think it was. But when we got home, we ended up going to the emergency room and it ended up being way more serious than we thought. And she's having some heart issues going on. So that was an unexpected turn of events when we got home last week. So this week has been just my mom kind of recovering, and then my dad and my brother flew down, and I had my family at my house again, and just kind of did a little piddly things around the house, and just so I guess this week my first recording was about just doing the things, doing the things that you want to do, and how do you get there. So with life coaching, one of the things I've learned is, it's about asking the hard questions, and a lot of it is the life coach is there to kind of guide you and ask the questions, but then you figure it out. Like with that question, you kind of process it through your brain, and then all of a sudden you come up with the outcome of how to get to there. Because sometimes we get stuck, and you have that, life coach is kind of like your mentor to get you to the bridge to the other side, because I've done therapy and I've done life coaching and I've done trauma life coaching, and therapy is really, really good, and it's a great place for, venting and kind of processing with the therapist, licensed therapist, to kind of get to where maybe things you were going through. But then life coaching gets you to the other side. I feel like it's kind of like a breakthrough. It helps you break through those stuck spots, and you don't have to talk about the same thing over and over, but you kind of open up your mind. It's kind of like a key to your mind. So some of the questions, a question to think of this week is, if money was no obligation, like you had no need to have a ton of money, or let's say you had an abundant money, what would you do? Like, what would you actually choose to do with your life? Where would you go? Would you change your career? Just ask yourself that question. And then another question is, if you could have your ideal day, what would that look like? Like when you wake up in the morning to when you go to bed. Like if you could have a perfect day that you planned out, like let's say you go to this job and you hate it and you're miserable and you never get to go on vacation, or you never take your time off to go on vacation, and you're just like, man, my life sucks, and you sit and daydream, like, this is my day, this is what I want to do. What would that look like? What would that day look like? So those are two questions for you to sit and think about. That's kind of like how life coaching works. So each podcast I try to come up with, something to kind of, a free tool so that you can think about, like if life coaching is for you, I would love to do a 30-minute consultation with you just to kind of see. But those are kind of the things that we would go through. And It can be, however many weeks you choose to do it. And even when I start my subscription thing, it'll kind of be like a whole process of a certain amount of weeks, kind of like I did when I did mine and when I did my training. But with that, like thinking about like choosing to take my mom on this trip, it'd been over 10 years. My friend and I are like, we cannot wait 10 years again to do a trip. Like, our moms are getting older, and so we planned it. We just booked the things. My friend had a timeshare in Vegas. She got the hotel. I bought the tickets to the No Doubt concert, and then we just kind of went from there. Great things. My mom worked for Alaska Airlines. She was retired, and so we get to fly standby, so that's always awesome. Definitely helps on traveling. But some of the things like goals, since I kind of struggled several years back. My son got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and I was in a marriage that was difficult. It was a hard marriage. I think both of us were pretty unhappy throughout most of it. And sometimes it just was hard to just function or get going during the day. And I just remember one day I did not want to get out of bed, and the kids were little, and I was just kind of going through a depressive mode. And I just remember hearing this voice choose this moment, get up, get going. You have to choose. You have to choose today. And so a lot of times I think we're either going in the past, or we're looking in too far forward, and we don't just sit in the present day. We don't sit in the moment and the gift that we have. And so this weekend with my mom, I just felt like, especially coming home and then finding out with the heart stuff, and she's gonna have to have surgery, I just feel like it was really just I was so glad I took those moments. I took that time to spend that weekend with her, because as you get older, you just think your parents are going to be around forever, and they're not always going to be here. And it's sad, and I try not to think about it too much, because I don't want to think about sad stuff, but it's also reality. And I think that if we could just create our life to be what we want, we could all be so much happier. And so that's kind of been my goal, especially when I went through that thing. I want to figure out how to live in moments. And I know, my kids, they're getting older, and they just say, Mom, we just loved, the things that you would take us to do. And we always had, even on vacation, if Dad was in a bad mood or grumpy or didn't want to do anything, you would go, and we'd go on walks and go, find new trails to walk, or go on hikes, or we would find things fun to do. And you always had something for us to look forward to. Just the simple mundane stuff, I think, really definitely created childhood that probably could have been a lot worse. But by doing that, those little things, by learning to live in the day, by learning to live in the present, and we don't always get it right. It's not easy to do every day, but when we do get to choose, and we get to figure out how to get our life to where we want it, what we want our ideal day to look like, that kind of thing. I feel like we get so much more joy in that. I know a lot of people are realizing they just don't want to sit in an office all day long. They don't want to be in this corporate job that, it's not all about the things and the money. It's more about the moments and the experiences with the ones that you love. And that really was definitely called out this last week for me. And so I guess just my thoughts this week was about that, rewiring your brain. I don't know if you've ever heard of Dr. Karen Leaf, but I really highly recommend checking her out. She has books on Amazon. She's a neuroscientist, and she's helped people get off medications. And I first found out about her from a family friend, when my son was kind of going through his struggles several years ago, the first time around. And then I ordered some of his books and had him read them. And she's on Instagram. She has YouTube videos where you can get kind of some of the little snippets, and she has a lot of interviews she's done. But Dr. Karen Leaf, highly recommend her. She talks about how you can like rewire your brain and like choosing to find the positivity, and it's not sitting there in rose-colored glasses. That's, because life has pain, life has hurt, and not everything's perfect. But you can find perfect in some of the hard times, and sometimes the hard times help us appreciate life a little bit more, or we get to cherish things a little bit more. So I highly recommend her. I highly recommend Dr. Carolyn Leaf, and also just putting out there my life coaching business, Beautifully Revived. You can check out my Instagram. I do recommend Stronger Co. If you're looking for trauma grief coaching, I am one of the coaches on there. It is all nonprofit through her program. She gets grants to help women who have been in, abusive relationships, or, there's infidelity or anything like that, where you're just struggling. And she can direct you to even like trauma therapists and stuff like that. Excellent source. Highly recommend it. And just sitting there thinking about just a lot of the things I've learned is, like journaling techniques and ways to just appreciate my day and just be thankful in it, just waking up. And I'm getting to live a life that I never thought I would get to live. And I loved raising my babies, and I love them being older, and that they're my friends, and that I'm really close with my kids. When I got home from my trip, they'd all surprised me that my boys live out of state, and they talked with my daughter who lives with me, and they ordered me a big bouquet of flowers and had it delivered on the day I got home from my trip with my mom, because they didn't get to spend Mother's Day with me this year. And it was just sweet. And they said what a blessing it is to have a mom like me. And it really just made my day and made my heart happy. And I'm like, okay, yay. Because sometimes I've been hard on myself. Like, okay, you struggled. You didn't give them the dad that they deserved. There's just things that you feel guilty about that I'll beat myself up over. And they're pretty awesome kids. And I can just be thankful that they love that I am their mom. And I didn't get it all right, but they still know that I love them unconditionally, and they are my 3 favorite peoples in the whole entire world. So I guess just thoughts this week are, ask yourself this question, ask yourself those questions to think about, like, what would your ideal day look like? And if you didn't have to worry about money, what would you actually do? And then work towards those goals. One of my biggest things has been to live debt-free, and I live totally debt-free. I don't have a car payment. I drive a little bit of an older vehicle. I don't have, toys, but I get to do fun adventures, and the moments and the experiences and getting to go do that is way more than I bought a small house. I sold my other house and some land, and I bought a house for cash, and best thing I ever did. I know it's not always easy for everybody to be able to do that. Dave Ramsey is an excellent source for getting yourself out of debt. That saved me big time. And now I get to live a life. I don't live a life of luxury, but I live a life of luxury in the moments that I get to do with my family and my friends and my kids. And someone asks me if I want to do something, and I'm like, and I want to do it. I'm like, yes. My bucket list is getting checked off, and that makes me happy. And I know that when I go to my grave, I'm going to be like, I loved the life I lived. And I think a lot of us just want that. A lot of us just want to be there, and it's really hard to get there. Sometimes just, we're taught the American dream, and everything's about debt, and have the nicest car, and have every toy. I mean, I did that when I was married. That's what we did. We had lots and lots of things, and it didn't make my husband or I happy. It actually made us more miserable, and it made him super miserable. He could never get enough of anything to make him happier. He was always striving for more, which is not always a bad thing, but if it makes you miserable doing that and you can't live a life and you're just angry and unhappy and you're always seeking stuff out, then it's not worth it. It's not worth it to me. And don't get me wrong, I love going on boats. I love having a boat. I love four-wheeling. I love snow machining. I love to do all those things. But when you are bombarded with all that stuff and then you don't even get to enjoy taking it out because of the cost of it, or because, they break down, you got to fix it, or you just have too much stuff, you don't get to live in the moment anymore. And so that's kind of just been my goal, like to live in the moment, to live in the day-to-day, and to live in the present. And my present day is my present. My kids are my gifts in this world of making decisions maybe that at 17 years old weren't the ones that maybe I should have made, or maybe they were, and it just was, my path got redirected. Because definitely in a different place I ever thought I would be in my late 40s. That is for sure. So this week, if you're interested in looking for a life coach to help you break through those struggles, to kind of open your mind up, I sit over with coffee if you're in my hometown, or a Zoom call, a phone call, whatever. Sometimes it's just someone you need to talk to and kind of get those hard things out. I am here and I would love to help you. You can contact me through my Beautifully Revived on Instagram. You can contact me at my email. I'll leave everything below with my website and everything in the description on the podcast. And I just hope you have a great week. And I look forward to giving you some tips and tricks next week for living a life that you love, creating a life that you love. Have a great week.